and welcome back to Favorite Things. My name is Dan and I thank you for joining me on my journey as I slim down my watch collection. Today I'm going to do another tough choices type video where I pick one of two similar watches in my collection, one to get rid of and one to keep. And this time the choice is between this 1968 Omega Geneve Admiralty or this 1969 Omega Geneve 041 with a blue dial. Even though these watches have different case shapes, their components and functions are similar enough where it's difficult for me to wear one and not instantly compare to the other one and vice versa. This is something that I call comparison anxiety. And unfortunately with this watch obsession thing, it's one of these kind of issues that does detract from the enjoyment of the hobby. So let's compare these two and talk about which one's going to go and which one's going to stay. Here we go. Now, I've already gone into the history of the Geneve line of Omega watches in my Dan Henry video, and that can be found here and also linked in the description of this video below. These two Geneve models are both manual wound with date functions using the same 613 caliber Omega movement. They have identical handsets with the baton ghost hand and their highly visible orange seconds hand. They also both have these non-numeric faceted baton or baguette shaped markers. That's one of the key factors to my decision to let one of these go. Let's look at the blue 041 first. This Omega has a reference number of 136.041. What's nice is that every variation of this particular case shape, whether it's date, no date, manual, or auto, all have the 041 as the last three digits. This barrel-shaped case is unusual in that there is no bezel whatsoever. The case has this mid-century modern simplicity shape that has these radially brushed lugs and polished sides and of course an acrylic crystal. This particular example has very sharp case edges and corners, and I believe it has not had any repolishing. The vast majority of these 041s that you will see have a sunburst silver dial, applied Omega logo, and the more formal pencil hand set with a needle seconds hand. Occasionally you'll see a blue dial version or the rare dark gray or black dial. Those colored dials have these Admiralty style ghost baton hands with orange seconds hand and the painted logos. These are quite rare to find on bracelets. Because of the case shape and short lugs, the end pieces on the bracelet have a very subtle curve. It's almost straight across. This one happens to be paired with an original riveted 1168 3-link bracelet with an 18mm fitting. I purchased this blue faux leather strap with matching orange stitching that would have looked really good on this one, but I've never even tried it on. I just prefer this particular watch on a bracelet. It's very comfortable, especially with the expanding riveted links. Yes, it's quite scratched up, but I don't mind, and I have a spare one here in storage. I had this Omega expertly serviced by a master Omega watchmaker, and it's winding smoothly and working very well. Let's move on to the Geneve Admiralty. Like I said, I've already reviewed this model in detail on my Dan Henry video. It's a reference 136.015 and has a very clean matte dial, along with the same ghost handset and orange seconds hand as the previous Omega I just talked about. But it also has matching orange hour slashes as well as the orange anchor logo, signifying it to be an Admiralty. It has a grippy 6mm winding crown and this quirky 17mm lug gap, which is probably the biggest challenge with these non-diver Admiralty models. I modified this 18mm Uncle Seiko Omega 1171 style bracelet, and it really transforms this watch. The original bracelets were expanding Fixoflex stretch bracelets, which can be a bit troublesome in my opinion. I'm waiting to send this one off for service. It works fine and keeps good time, but winding and setting the movement feels a little bit loose, and I'm really curious how that will change with a full overhaul. This Geneve Admiralty has a few quirky hidden secrets. As you can see, this is the short lug version of the non-diver Admiralty, and the serial number on the movement confirms that it comes from 1968, which is the first year of this model, and it's consistent with the short lugged version of the case. However, unlike all other short lug versions, the outside corner of the lugs are straight and not slightly beveled. I have a suspicion that somebody cut down a long lugged case. This is not an easy task. Looking at the apparently re-drilled lug holes, they look perfect. Also, this Admiralty came fitted with an 18mm 1168 bracelet with the original 589 end links expertly filed down to fit the 17mm case. I suspect that some watchmaker made this his special project and it turned out great. So I'm not sure what's going on here, but I don't care. I love how this turned out, especially looking on my Uncle Seiko bracelet, and the straight lug ends give it a bolder look than the standard beveled short lugs. So how do I decide? Well, this isn't too hard. The matte black dial, the better condition, possibly unpolished case of the Admiralty is a strong factor. The quirky 17mm lug spacing is not an issue anymore since I have it on a bracelet that works very well for me. Winding and setting the time is much more of a pleasure with this watch than the 041, which has a relatively small crown. Plus the orange accents on the dial, and how cool is the case shape with those crown guards. It is a very unique sports model. Whereas the 041 is kind of a compromise between formal and sporty. The blue dial is gorgeous with its sunburst finish, definitely leaning towards dressy. But that conflicts with the high contrast and sporty handset and dial markers. And if I'm in the mood for something a little bit more formal, I'll just put on my Seamaster 166.010 with its polished case, silver sunburst dial with applied markers and Dauphine handset. So who's the winner? Clearly the watch that is staying between these two is the Admiralty. If the upcoming service doesn't significantly improve the loose feeling crown and movement, well, that will just mean that it might be higher on the list for the next purge cycle, whenever that might happen. But for now, it's time to say goodbye to the Geneve 041, and without it in my rotation, there will be fewer distractions to the enjoyment of my other pieces. While I was getting ready to prepare the Geneve 041 for listing photos, my younger brother expressed genuine interest in this watch. Hey, that's perfect. So he's gonna wear it for a while, and it'll leave my collection, my rotation, but not in an absolute sense. It'll kind of be like on standby. So if he wouldn't have voiced his interest in this watch, it would have definitely been listed for sure. I'm certainly looking forward to how he likes it. Hey, thanks again for joining me, and I'll see you next time. Take it easy.